All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It's great to see you all in person again. And thank you, Alan, for joining us.
Great to be here.
Thrilled to have you back at the IGF-USA. I looked it up, and it looks like the last time you spoke here was the IGF-USA 2016, talking about IoT and big data. Thankfully, those issues have been entirely solved, so
we can move on. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No, but it is great to have you here with a great range of expertise that can be applied to all of the things that NTIA is focused on with your agenda, but also the topics that we care about here at the IGF-USA. So can't think of anyone better to kick off the IGF-USA 2022. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. It is great to be here, to be back at IGF, and to be supporting the multi-stakeholder model. It's just good to be here. And I will also say I looked at the agenda, and I wish I could stay the whole day because it's a great agenda that you have. So congratulations.
Yeah. So thank you again. And given the lively agenda we have today, we'll just jump right into it with a topic that you get asked about a lot and is on the top of everybody's mind, the Internet for All initiative, and that's a big part of the NTIA's work right now. And really, it's a historic investment that is long overdue in addressing some of the needs across this country to get people connected. And at the IGF-USA, we're looking at this year through the lens of the local communities and the importance of their role in this process, and making sure that there is a solid connection between the federal programs that are rolling out and the needs of the local community. So it was great to see that get incorporated into the legislation and the programs, the community engagement and consultation process. So as you're rolling this out, what do you expect from states in engaging with communities to ensure that they're effectively part of the process, not only in the planning, but the actual implementation and outcomes?
Well, first, thanks for the question, and again, thank you for inviting me here. And I'll just maybe take a half step back to start with, just to say this is an exciting time at NTIA, and I think for our country. We have been talking about the digital divide in this country for over 20 years. A lot of you have been part of that conversation. And now, really for the first time, we've been given, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law, the resources to really do something structural about it. And that is pretty exciting. And we are centrally located in that conversation at NTIA. We've been given $48 billion, it's a fair amount of money in the bipartisan infrastructure law, billion with a B, with a very sort of modest mission, which is just to connect everyone in America with high-speed, reliable, affordable internet service, and make sure that everyone is connected. I get a little nervous sometimes when people say everyone, but that is the mission. And so we're excited to be part of it and working with our sort of sister agencies who are also a part of this. And I'll just say one more thing about that, which is, I look back and I think, generations before us brought water or electricity, to rural America, to everyone, built the interstate highway system. And this is our generation's infrastructure project. This is the big thing that we can do to make sure that people can thrive in the modern economy. So it is an exciting moment. You rightly say, the linchpin of this is really local coordination. It is really local communities that know best where there are connectivity problems, what the best way to solve those problems are going to be. So from the beginning, the law that we're implementing speaks to local coordination, the importance of it. We put out a series of notices from NTIA describing the requirements for our program. This was in May. And local coordination is a key piece of this. We're going to be giving money to the states. The states are going to have to submit plans to us. Those plans have to, we say this in our notices, those plans have to show how they've coordinated with local governments to make sure that they're reaching everyone. And we mentioned a number of different ways they can do this. They could do it through a notice and comment, public comment period. They can do it by creating an auditable record of all the interactions they've had with local communities. They can do it through a challenge process to let local communities challenge their plans, and there will be opportunities for that. So we are going to hold states' feet to the fire on this one. It's incredibly important. We're only going to succeed in this if communities are brought into it, and that's the way we're going to do it.
Great, thank you for that, Ellen, and glad to hear that there are mechanisms in place to ensure the effective community consultation.
We're going to
try. In line with that, just wanted to follow up quickly on the ensuring that not only the consultation happens, but that in the implementation process and the outcomes, that that input is really taken into account by those states and put into action.
Well, I think, that we have a couple of good hooks into the process. A lot of the way that we're going to give out this $48 billion, $42 billion of it is in state grant programs for what we call our BEAD program, our deployment program. And to get the money, states have to present us with an initial plan that we lay out pretty clearly what the requirements are going to be for that plan. Then they run their grant-making process. Then they have to submit a final plan to us to show us how they did it, and then they get the rest of their money. So they get part of it up front and part of it afterwards. In each of those stages, we will be watching to make sure that the coordination happens, that all of the requirements that we've put into the notice are met. So and then this won't end in a year or two. This is something, it's not like we give the money and walk away. We'll be doing oversight of this project for years to make sure the money's been spent the right way.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And like you kind of implied earlier, a kind of hesitation around the term everyone, recognizing that obviously the goal is to get everyone connected and a full participant in the digital society. There will be challenges to that, recognizing that there are limited resources, relatively limited resources, let's say, for urban communities and for Indian country. And so as we think about not only how to effectively implement this round of funding, but addressing the remaining gaps, how are you approaching the collection of data and understanding the needs of these different communities in a more nuanced way? Obviously, there are steps happening with the FCC to improve their data, but even that is very limited in what you can actually learn from it. So are there any plans to take the input you get from states' plans and community consultation and the actual implementation to better understand and inform future efforts to address those that don't get the benefits that they need through this program?
I'll just start by saying, actually, I think the need is really great, and I think particularly in those areas that you mentioned, the urban areas, the tribal areas. I will say we do have substantial resources, and our expectation is that we're going to address those communities, right? The programs that we're implementing, the state grant program for deployment, the digital equity program, almost $3 billion for digital equity programming, we fully expect that those funds will be used not just in rural areas, but in urban areas. We know that there are really major connectivity challenges, even in urban and suburban areas. So we've seen it, we know it, and so we fully expect money is going to go to address those issues. Tribal, you also mentioned, we have now $3 billion in our tribal connectivity program. And while that program has been wildly oversubscribed, so you're right, there's a huge amount of demand, we really hope we can move the needle, and they'll also be eligible for these other programs. So we do really hope to address those communities very squarely in this work. That said, we know that this is going to be an ongoing project for many years to do this, and data collection is a huge piece of it. We can't succeed if we don't know where to spend the money, and the way that Congress has directed us to do that is to look to maps and to look to particularly to the FCC's maps. So that's going to be a critical piece of this for years to come, making sure that those maps, which are getting better and better, there's a process going on right now at the FCC to put out their next iteration of maps. We're going to be really focused on making sure that good data comes into that, and that as we deploy and as the federal government goes out and spends money, it's clearly reflected in those maps. We're also doing a huge amount of data collection independently ourselves. We're going to be watching where we're spending money, how it's being deployed. We've got MOUs with all of our sister agencies to share data with each other and to try and make that data collection uniform so it's easy for providers. So we're trying to just make it so that it's not 16 different kinds of data formats that you submit to all these different federal agencies. So we are really focused on collecting that data, and I think over time it will give us a better and better picture of where where the remaining problem is.
Great, thanks. And just quick follow-up on that. In the processes to collect data outside of the FCC, do you have a specific goal to collect information concerning the reliability of connections, affordability, and different elements that impact adoption beyond what you can learn from the FCC maps?
The answer is yes to all of the above, and some of it is further along than others. We'll obviously be collecting a lot of information about deployment. We're keenly interested in information about affordability. There is, ultimately our goal is adoption, right? Meaningful use of the internet. It's not just enough to have a connection running past somebody's home. They need to be able to afford to get online. They need to have the devices to do it. They need to have the skills to be able to thrive online. Some of those things are harder and harder to measure, but we're looking at it, and one thing that we do is we do with the Census Bureau, the Internet Use Survey, and that's going to be a continuing tool for us longitudinally to see how different communities are using the internet.
Great, thanks for that. And just quickly, before we move on to the next topic, obviously the digital divide is not specific to the US, and NTIA is focused globally as well through ITU and other efforts. Just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about what you're doing at that level.
Well, I'll just say, I mean, we are not alone in the United States in wanting to make sure that all of our community is connected. People around the world are working on this problem, and we have a keen interest in that as well. We have for years as a government sought to make sure that people all around the world could get online. The latest foray into this has been our work at the ITU's development conference, which happened just, I'm looking, maybe just last month. Yes, in Kenya. It seems like a world ago, but our team was there. The Deputy Secretary of Commerce made a big announcement about Partner to Connect, which is a big initiative of the ITU to try to make sure we get the next 2.9 billion people who are unconnected in the world, to get all of those folks online. So we've pledged resources, expertise, sharing what we're learning in this whole process with others around the world, and I think that's going to be a very fruitful endeavor, and it's part of why we're so enthusiastic also at the ITU about Doreen Bogdan-Martin's candidacy to be the Secretary General of the ITU. For those who don't follow this, the ITU's very important organization. There's a big election this year for who's going to be the head of it. There's an American candidate running, Doreen Bogdan-Martin, who's been really working on this development effort for years. She's an incredible person, incredible leader for the organization, and I think strategically very important for us all to support her candidacy.
Awesome, thank you, and excited for that.
Fingers crossed. Late September is the election, so stay tuned.
Will do. Yeah. Now I want to shift a little bit to the cybersecurity side of things. As we invest in networks and also critical infrastructure, then there becomes the question of how we keep all those things secure. So can you talk a little bit about NTIA's efforts to support international open standards and the role of this community and industry in the development and implementation of those?
Well, a couple of different reflections on that. I mean, keeping the network secure is an ever increasingly important problem, issue for all of us, and we see it every day. It's a huge priority for the administration. I will say there are many agencies working on this. We're not necessarily the lead agency on this, but we are part of trying to do our part at NTIA and at the Commerce Department to contribute to the huge amount of energy now that's going into creating a more secure network. Two things I'd mention that we're really working on, excited about. One is the work we can do to leverage those broadband programs. So you'll see in our notices that we've put out a real requirement that if you receive federal money, we're going to really work to make sure that the networks you're deploying are secure. We've got a set of requirements, and that's starting with implementation of the NIST framework on cybersecurity, looking at supply chain security, restrictions on equipment that can be used. So we really want to make sure we can leverage those billions of dollars to get a more secure infrastructure in the United States. Around the world or globally, we're also thinking, we're doing a lot of work right now on 5G equipment security, and particularly thinking about vendor diversity and how we can promote more secure 5G infrastructure, and particularly open standards like Open RAN. And we're really excited about the possibilities for a more open stack in 5G equipment, and one that I think ultimately will lead to more security. We've been working around the world with our allied nations, promoting something called the Prague Principles, which really a set of principles around Open RAN and more open 5G technology. We're very hopeful about, there's an innovation fund in the CHIPS Plus Act that is making its way through Capitol Hill that would give us more money to do research and development in that space. It's a huge body of work for us. So just two examples of ways that we're trying to use the tools that we have to promote a more secure infrastructure.
Awesome, thanks. And then going beyond that, as we think about not only building but securing networks, there's a big question around the workforce that's available to make all of this happen. And so as we think about programs and investments that might be needed to make that happen, what do you see as NTA's role, the larger government role, and industry role in making sure that both the public and private sector needs are met?
Well, workforce is a huge issue. It's a huge issue across the work that we all do, I'll just say, and we're seeing it first and foremost in this, and again, in the context of the broadband deployments that we're doing. The president has looked at the infrastructure bill. It's both a connection program for us, but it's also a program to promote American jobs and promote American manufacturing. We believe that the programs we're implementing are going to create tens of thousands, over 100,000 new jobs in the coming years. And one thing that we hear from providers is there's a real need for talented people to fill those jobs. So we're very focused on how we can build that workforce. And you'll see us implementing tools like, again, requiring states to do workforce training and planning. Their plans need to include a strategy for workforce development. A lot of the funding that we're putting out, planning grants, digital equity programs, can be used for planning. We're partnering with nonprofits that are real experts in upskilling and digital skill building to try and work on investing in that. So that's just an example, again, tools that we have that we can use to try and promote this. And I would just say, as an aside, and it's not exactly what you were asking, but I just look at this room and I think about the issues that we're dealing with. We have our own workforce issues here in Washington and in this field. We do a lot of work on spectrum. We do a lot of work on internet policy issues. And I would just note there's such a need for more people in the field who can do those issues. I look at the spectrum work we're doing, tremendous need for more expertise in that space to deal with the very hard policy issues that come up around that. All the issues you'll be talking about today, I mean, it's just a growth area for us. So that's a narrow sliver of the problem, but I can't help but saying it here. We need to build the field.
Awesome, thank you. And in the interest of time, I'm going to do a hard pivot rather than trying to gracefully move on to this topic.
Pivot away. Let's see. What you got?
So want to talk about the global interconnected internet and the threats of fragmentation.
Right.
And we'll have two questions for you. Start with a more locally oriented one and then move on to the global. So as we look at a lot of the topics that we'll be discussing today, there are policies being put in place at different levels, a lot of state levels, that can have an impact on the user experience and access to platforms and communications, or at least a potential impact on that. And so how do you see your role with respect to the impact that that might have on commerce and communication across state lines?
So it's interesting. I mean, when you say it, I'm not sure. Well, I would just say one reflection is that when we talk about fragmentation, I'm not sure we're always talking about, or traditionally have talked about it in the context of the kinds of concerns that people have about, say, a patchwork of state laws around privacy, right? I think fragmentation has traditionally and remains a huge issue when we talk about fragmentation of our protocols, of our naming and numbering structure, and we are very watchful around that. We could talk more about that. Within the U.S., I think there is a different kind of, I hesitate to call it fragmentation, but we watch with some interest and concern the notion that, different people in different states may have very different experiences of the internet and different protections. And in some cases, that's a great laboratory of democracy, our different states. But in many cases, and when we talk about baseline things like privacy, I think we can do better. And I'll just say this, I come across this a lot as we're talking about the broadband work. I'm out in the field a lot. We're going to be bringing millions of people online. What kind of internet will they experience, especially if they're experiencing it really for the first time? And people are very concerned, how do we protect people's privacy? So I will just say, it is, as a national comprehensive privacy law would benefit American consumers and would benefit American business. And we're ready for it. And I think that it would also benefit a comprehensive national law would also benefit our leadership around the world. I hear this all the time internationally as people look and see that, we don't have those baseline protections that many other countries have now implemented. So it is time for us to act in this space and to make sure that people all across the country are protected and that you have a baseline of protections, whether you're accessing the internet here in DC or across the river in Virginia or up in Bethesda, Maryland, that it shouldn't matter. You should have at least a baseline of protection. So we're hopeful, we're watching this. The administration has been very clear about the fact that we think privacy is very important. The president spoke about it in the State of the Union around kids' privacy. It's in the executive order on competition that came out last year. You can look to some of our sister agencies. The FTC has been doing a huge amount of work leading in this space, and I think you'll see more on that. And we haven't taken a position on the privacy bills that are making their way through Congress, but we're watching them carefully and with great interest and hope.
Awesome, thank you. And then you mentioned obviously the global side. That's a great concern for us. It's in fact our closing plenary of the day. We'll be focusing on the threat of global fragmentation. So as we look at those different factors that threaten to create some fragmentation, including the geopolitical as well as alternate addressing mechanisms. What steps are you taking to address that? And then how can we at the IGF-USA and the broader community support in those efforts to keep the global internet as intact as possible?
Well, as you said, and I said before, we strongly believe in the importance of a unified internet, right? It's been an incredible engine for opportunity, for exchange of information, for connection, and a fragmented internet will raise real challenges. And we watch with concern these challenges as they're arising, and you've mentioned some of them, and challenges to the underlying internet protocols that we've all now adopted, challenges to the naming and numbering system, challenges to the multi-stakeholder processes that we've put in place that have been so important. So we are watching that with great concern and want to make sure that we are really investing in those processes and working with our fellow governments to make sure that they're engaged as well. So we've been in regular conversation with other governments to promote that vision. You may have seen the Declaration for the Future of the Internet, which is something that the administration was very proud to lead, 60 other countries plus. We're going to be trying to get more signatories on it as well to promote this notion of a open, secure, reliable, free internet, a single internet. And I would just say in terms of this community, we need to make sure, and this is one of the reasons I'm delighted to be here, that we need to make sure that the multi-stakeholder model continues to work. Right? And that only happens if we all are engaged in it. Sometimes it takes a lot of work. Sometimes it's slower than we'd like it to be. But I do think that if we all engage in it, we continue to embrace this idea about what the internet should be like and how it can be. I think that is a model that will ultimately prevail, but it's going to take vigilance by all of us. We have to be really clear-eyed about the threats that are coming often from authoritarian regimes, often from people who are interested in creating a very different kind of environment for people online. We need to be vigilant against that. We need to combat it, and the best way to do it is what you all are doing here, which is engaging in that multi-stakeholder process, having those conversations, tackling the hard problems, showing people that we can do it. And I think that model will win. It is the right model over time. the open internet, a single open internet, supported by the multi-stakeholder processes is the right way to go, but it takes that work. And so I really salute you and thank you for being here, and thank you for your leadership in this work.
Thanks. It's a labor of love indeed. But want to thank you for being here, addressing all of these important topics. Like I mentioned, you can speak to a lot of these, and I know you reviewed the agenda, so would like to invite you to give us any closing thoughts with respect to any of the other topics that you would have liked to have covered if we had more time.
I have thoughts on all of them. We can talk them out offline over coffee, but I know this, I just reiterate what I said. This is, first of all, and it's such an important time to be having these conversations. We're feeling it, of course, at NTIA because we have this amazing mission right now about a generational mission to connect everybody, and we need everybody's help for that. So please, all hands on deck in the coming years to do this. But more broadly, the issues that you're going to be engaging in, the things you're talking about, these are challenges that have been, some of them have been looming for years, some of them are brand new as technology changes. We need to engage in them. We need to come up with solutions that really make sure that the technology we're building is something that makes people's lives better. And if we're guided by that principle, I think we will continue to do great work and people will continue to believe in this model that we've all embraced. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your hard work thinking about these very difficult issues, and onward.
Great. Well, thank you, Ellen, again for being here. And with that, we're going to transition. Well, first of all, a round of applause for Alan joining us. And then we are going to transition right into our first panel of the day, talking about beyond content moderation. So.